Wow, using my trusty original Xbox 360 controller I got with my system back in the day. Supposedly the plastic is really brittle, and I've actually also destroyed one of my controllers because I dropped it on the floor and something snapped off. And yeah, those plastics, they really didn't age very well, but this actually hardly has yellowed, so for some reason the universe has been quite gentle to it. And I just love the colored buttons and the gray, and yeah, it's been with me ever since the early 2005 or something like that. I'm not sure when the Xbox 360 came out, but this actually is my controller. Elise actually had a separate controller with a little red mark on it, which has since ceased functioning because, well, one of the analog sticks is drifting, but perhaps that's actually changeable. Didn't throw it out, of course, because you want to repair these things. But yeah, this is actually hooked up to my Little Red Dell, which is from 2012. I bought it in 2012, and yeah, why I'm so fond of this Little Red Dell is actually that this was the first pre-built system that I got after I had a disaster with a Core 2 Duo system from Acer. It was the 3810 or something like that. That system, it had a Core 2 Duo, only lasted for about perhaps 8 months or something like that. Actually, I believe a week after the warranty actually passed, it killed itself, and the power supply went, and I tried to put in a different power supply. I loved the case, and it was nice and cheap. It had a dedicated graphics card. I believe it was an NVIDIA. I think it was a TNT or an early GeForce card. But yeah, that system died on me. And before that, I actually had a pre-built Pentium 4. And I was very anxious to actually get another system, to build another system. A Pentium 4, and before that a Pentium 3, which I still actually now have again, a Pentium 3 Voodoo 3 with one of these BX440 or something motherboards. Actually, I got a whole set of Celeron and Pentium 3 processors that actually fit the socket instead of the slot, so I'm actually having an adapter board come in from Spain or something, I think, or from, I'm not sure where from, but yeah, supposedly it's compatible with those processors, which may speed up the system a bit more. There's a Voodoo 3 3000 in it. It has 256 megabytes of RAM. Actually, I featured it in some videos prior. Also, I did run the virtual game station, a PlayStation emulator on it. And today, I figured it would be nice to see whether or not my Little Red Dell actually is capable of full speed PlayStation 2 emulation. It has been hit and miss on the i7-2600, and often if you wanted to turn on software rendering mode or something like that, it really was struggling. But that was also because I had a very weak graphics card in it. I believe it came with a 480 or 840 GT NVIDIA graphics card, which really was, well, only slightly better than the built-in graphics. But now I've upgraded to a 3rd gen i7, which really works well in the system and really works well with the GTX 1050. I'm actually very curious whether it'll run a specific game that I've never been able to get running full speed on this Dell before. So I've downloaded the most recent version and the developer's version of PCSX2, and I'm running Ridge Racer Type 5 or Ridge Racer 5, which was one of the release games on the PlayStation 2. and it has a weird graphics mode. They were still figuring out how to program the PlayStation 2, so it has these weird interlaced graphics, and a lot of the effects are actually also using the interlaced mode on the CRT. And yeah, if you ran that on an emulator, it used to come out really budged. And only recently, only the past months, they've been able to modify, rectify some of the issues. There's still quite a few issues, but I'm able to get it running full speed. And yeah, I'm quite stoked. So let's go check out the video. I'm just, recording some videos on the Red Dell and editing it with DaVinci Resolve. It does render things at real time, so if something takes half an hour, it takes half an hour to render, which isn't a bad thing, because I'm actually doing all this at 60 frames per second HD, which probably more or less is the standard these days on YouTube, at least HD. And yeah, I mean, I could go 30 frames per second, but yeah, 60 frames per second, especially with these games, is actually very interesting. And if you do have a PlayStation, and if you have it modded, or if it's capable of playing out of region games, if you play Ridge Racer 5, it definitely pays to get the NTSC version, because that's actually quite a fair bit nicer to look at, because at 50 Hertz the interlaced graphics, they really grate even more than they do on the NTSC. So let's go check out me running PCSX2, and I'll shift it over, because I'm actually running this on my ultra wide, so I will shift the window over and make it full screen and stuff. Bear in mind, this system, the GTX 1050, is actually capturing the whole 3840 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. It's actually quite amazing that it is actually capable of that, whilst still emulating the PlayStation. I mean, this Little Red Dell, this almost 9-year-old system, that it is capable of doing stuff like this is actually quite interesting. And I must say, I'm actually quite drawn to this, even though I have an R9, a Ryzen 9 3900X sitting next to it, which is my video editing system. I'm really fond of the Dell, and I'm really fond of these lower spec systems. And I think it isn't actually that low spec. It's very respectable, and being able to take it from a second generation to a third generation Intel i7 really is actually very interesting. Oh, and as my wife's system actually is very capable of handling the i7 2600, I actually ordered online and had to pay a bit more. I ordered from Germany the same processor, the i7 3700 70 or something like that, which is the same processor that I'm using in this system, and it's also capable of running that in Elisa's system. The TDP actually is lower, it's 77 or 75 or something like that, and the TDP on the i7 2600 is actually 95 or something like that. So I guess it actually does strain the motherboard a fair bit less, so it actually pays to have that processor in the system as well. It's really weird that Intel actually managed to have various Intel CPU generations that really didn't speed up that much. If you look at the instructions per clock cycle, how fast the single instruction is being executed and the next is taken. Only the multi-core performance actually improved a bit. And yeah, it's really weird how stagnant actually development on Intel CPUs was. Basically, I think Core 2 Duo, basically, the same core design was used in, up till recently. But it's actually quite interesting, this race between AMD and Intel, and to see who makes the better processor. I hope you know, a bit of competition. I mean, AMD is rising their prices to Ryzen levels, and Intel is actually slicing their prices, but their processors run hot and they are not very power efficient, but they've been known to be very great gaming processors. But enough, let's run PCSX2 on my Core i7 3770 GTX 1050, my Little Red Dell, capable of PlayStation 2 emulation. It really is. So, let me see. Trying to launch PlayStation 2 emulator. If all is well, I've Ridge Racer Type 5, Ridge Racer 5, boot ISO. I'm just gonna, let me see, this is the DirectX 11. The thing is that there's actually a problem there's actually a problem with the game running in OpenGL or Direct 3D, and it actually works well without any glitches if you use the software rendering mode. You can access that by pressing F9 temporarily, so you don't have to actually go into the and change the renderer. So I'm using the DirectX 11 renderer with the standard defaults, and I'm using 2 rendered threads for the software renderer. Doesn't really help to put some more in. I'm capturing this with the NVIDIA driver thingy. I'm playing this with an Xbox 360 controller, and I'm really curious to see how it will perform. If it actually performs very well and there's no downsides to this, I may actually put it on full screen. Well, you know what? I'll put it full screen. So like that. So it basically runs full screen, full speed in software mode. Suppose this actually was a release title for the PlayStation 2, and I remember this game and it being a hell of a good DVD player. Really made it a no-brainer. There wasn't actually a lot of games out for the PlayStation 2 when it came out, I remember, but it being a wonderful DVD player, a very affordable DVD player, made it a good purchase. I actually was using one of these weird PC drive-like thingies, like a Cyber Home DVD player, which was just awful. And this actually runs really well. So what used to be the case was that this is a heavily interlaced game. They were still getting used to the graphics, programming the graphics on the system. So if the screen looks a bit jumpy, that's because of the interlaced graphics. But a lot of these effects that they used, also the shadows, those were interlaced as well. So they used a sort of transparency effect by rapidly flashing a white, I think it was a white thing, but yeah, it's like a flashing cursor if you run it with the OpenGL or DirectX graphics. So this actually looks the part. This actually plays very well. This really is running full speed. Now, let me see if I can change the. Yeah, so this probably is the DirectX graphics, or it might not be, I'm not sure. They might have fixed it. But actually with the hardware graphics rendering, there's actually quite a few things wrong with this game. The textures on the car, they use a sort of well, with polygons they call it tessellation, but I'm not sure how they use that. How do you call it when you load in multiple texture variants, depending on how far away your thing is. Your I think they fixed the shadows in the hardware mode as well, but they weren't able to fix the textures because somehow they get mumbled up. You'll see a bit of texture corruption when I approach the car. There's like dots and stuff appearing. I'm not concentrating well enough to overtake them. But it's actually quite interesting because my Little Red Dell wasn't really up to running this in software mode full speed, not really, I think. And now it does it effortlessly, and I'm actually also capturing it with the GTX 1050 card, which is good. I tried investigating putting an RX 580 in it, in my system, because the power supply has the PCI Express power supply leads and stuff, but it seems the card is actually too long. My card is actually too long, and it hits the drive kit. I'll look here. You see the corruption, and if I press F9, this is actually the software mode. You can actually see that the texture corruption is gone. So yeah. So if your system is fast enough and you have a couple of threads to spare, it might not be a bad idea to just see if the software rendering with the PSX2 emulator takes care of a lot of graphical issues taking place, because, well, translating all the system calls to OpenGL or DirectX is a bit of a challenge, has been a bit of a challenge for the programmers over the years, but they've made huge strides. Even PlayStation 1 games actually run on this system. But yeah, it looks good. Looks good, and it's full speed, so I'm happy.